Well, Susan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks, Arlena. It's so fun to be here with you.
Should I be calling you doctor? I'm so rude.
No, you don't need to call me doctor. Once you have a PhD, you kind of like it when people say doctor, but no, you could totally call me Susan. Yeah.
Well, listen, we had such a good pre-interview chat. I always talk to people before, we booked the interview. And I was blown away. Okay, so we got sober the same year in the same city, and we had to have been at some of the same meetings that year.
Yeah. It's pretty remarkable, actually. I mean, because 1994 is a long time ago now.
It's
And
been a minute.
so people who got sober in 1994, woo, woo.
Girl, we
Yeah,
are coming up on 3 decades of sobriety.
coming up on it. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and you got sober way younger than I did. You got sober at 19?
20. It was just a few
Ah,
days after my 20th birthday. Yeah.
wow, that's amazing. Yeah,
Which of course means I spent my whole first year of sobriety thinking, what am I going to do on my 21st birthday?
What did you do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, during meetings, I just kept saying, well, I can't stay sober because I'm going to be turning 21. And they're like, when's that? And I'm like, 10 and a half months. And they're like, why don't you keep it in the day? So, after hearing that 10,000 times, I kind of let go of it and forgot about it. And then, my 21st birthday was a couple months away. And then it was like 6 weeks away. And then I'm standing outside my home group meeting and this guy says, hey, Susan, are you going to the convention? And I say, what convention? And he's like, well, the World AA
The world.
convention happens every 5 years. And it's happening, so it was, coming up on, summer of 1995. It's happening in San Diego this year.
Oh
And,
my
this
God.
was in San Francisco. And actually, I was in San Jose at the moment. And he said, a bunch of us are driving down. Do you want to go? And I said, when is it? And he said, June 29th to July 2nd or something. June 29th was my 21st birthday. So on my 21st birthday, I was partying in the streets in San Francisco with 60,000 sober alcoholics. And I had the time of my life, and I didn't drink and I didn't drug, and 21st birthday party, check. It was so great.
Isn't it funny the things that we worry about? I was 25 when I got sober, and I was like, what am I going to do when I get married?
On
And
my
I was
wedding,
like,
right?
are you
Are you
dating
dating
anyone?
anyone?
I was not. I was not dating anybody.
Yeah. Or
Oh,
at
that was,
least nobody you should have been dating.
oh, Lord have mercy. Well, funny story about me is I met my husband when I was 5 months sober, and he's 5 years ahead of me in sobriety.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, I mean, so far, so good.
Tisk tisk.
I
Dating a
know,
newcomer.
scandalous. Yeah, that's how I roll. I'm a rebel. What can I say? But yeah, so far so good. It's been a minute. We've been together a long time. Um, okay, before we jump in, I have this little game that I like to play called the lightning round, which is actually very slow, but I just kind of want to front load the episode with some resources. So when you first got sober, was there a book that really spoke to you that helped you early on in recovery?
Oh gosh. I really like just for today, the NA daily meditation reader.
Mm,
I really liked that book a lot. There's a lot of good
I know there's so
daily
many. Are you a
wisdom
reader? Do you like
in
to
it.
read a lot?
I'm a binge reader. Sometimes I read and sometimes I go stretches of time without reading.
Binging. That seems to be a recurring theme, is it not?
Yeah, it is in my life. It is.
Love that about you. Okay, that's a really good one. And do you have a go-to mantra or quote that you kind of live by? Like mine's obviously like one day at a time, hence the
I
podcast
find
title.
myself saying, God help me a lot. God
Ooh.
help me. Both,
But
yeah, both
is it like,
funny. No, and sometimes like earnestly, like, God,
yeah,
please help. God help
yeah,
me. Just God help me
yeah.
get through this minute, this day. Um, you know, I I live in the world now of recovery from food addiction. And I
Hmm.
actually say a lot, thank you, God, that's not my food. That's poison to me.
Ooh, that's good.
Thank you, God, that's not my food. That's poison to me. I say that a lot.
I'm totally writing that down. I'm pretty good with the food, but I don't plan ahead. Anyway, we'll talk about that on the next bucket. We're doing this in 2 parts, by the way. We're going to do a deep dive on your story. I'm super excited about that. And then next time you come on, we're going to go into a deep dive of bright line eating. I know people who swear by it. I also know people who swear at it, but we'll talk about that later.
Happy to
Um,
talk about all of it.
I know
Not
it'll
shy
be,
about it.
no, it's
Yeah.
really important though. I mean, I don't shy away from challenging ideas that are fear-based, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I think, people get like really hot and cold about like 12 step in general. And
Hmm.
I don't shy away from any of it as well.
Right. We
So
need to talk about it. And
we
it's
need
not
to
for
talk about it.
everybody, you know,
It's
and that's
not.
okay.
Yeah, that's totally okay. Yeah. You don't need to be mad about it. Don't be carrying that around. Do you have like a self-care routine that's like a morning practice or a weekly practice? Or I know some people who mention their like annual retreats. What does that look like for you, the whole self-care practice?
Oh yeah. My self-care practices have really deepened and evolved over the years. I have a pretty elaborate morning routine, evening
Ooh,
routine, and Friday day off self-care routine. So in the morning, so it evolves, but
yeah.
these days, like today, this is what it looks like. I wake up at 5 a.m. I meditate for half an hour.
Silently
Uh
or with like music?
Silently. Yeah, on a
Okay,
meditation bench. That's like my favorite object of self-care
nice.
is my meditation bench, meditationbench.com. I don't get paid for saying that. That's where I got my meditation bench. But it
Oh,
really
okay.
transformed my ability to sit because I have kind of a bad back and I can't sit on a cushion or cross my legs or anything like that. So yeah, so I meditate for half an hour. I read a daily meditation page first thing before that. Then I do about 20 minutes of Egoscue exercises. They're like postural correction exercises. Like you could think like physical therapy, something like that, but like exercises that I do to keep my body symmetrical and limber and stuff, strong. And then right now today I'm on the fourth step again. I keep working the steps. And so I'm writing on my fourth step. So I wrote for 15 minutes.
Ooh.
Um, and then I take sponsee calls. So I still sponsor a bunch and I have them call me in the morning. And I check in with my sponsees. Then I eat breakfast. So that's my morning routine. My evening routine is that I brush my teeth and then I pray by the side of the bed. Oh, I pray in the morning too. Like
Mm,
first thing when I tumble out of bed, I just get on my knees and I just ask God for a sober, abstinent, beautiful day, a bright day. I think through my day a little bit, like it says in the big book, like to think about the day ahead, and I just ask for strength, guidance, the right mindset, just ask
mhm.
for the opportunity to be of service. And then at night, I crawl into bed and I read 2 pages out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Oh, nice. Do you start
Um,
front to back, like
yeah,
the spiritual
I go
experience?
the whole thing. Yeah, like literally
Wow.
from the first couple pages that say the copyright stuff all the way through the appendices and yeah, on spiritual experience and how to get in touch with AA and the Lasker Award and all those last pages. And then I start over. So, I'm only reading the first 164 for about a third of it because a lot of the book is stories.
Yeah.
Um, so I read the big book and then I write in my 5-year journal. This is maybe my second favorite object of self-care is the 5-year journal. So the idea is that there's the date at the top. So like January 5th, March 12th, September 3rd, or whatever. And then each page is segmented horizontally into 5 sections. So the top section, you'd write the year 2023. Then you have about 5 or 6 lines, not much to encapsulate the day, whatever you're going to write about that day. And then when you've done it for a year, before you start writing, you get to read what you wrote on exactly that day a year ago.
Oh, wow.
And then when you've been doing it for 2 years, you get to read 2 years worth of entries. So I've been doing this without fail. I literally don't ever miss. I've missed once in 12 years. I've been doing this for 12 years. So I
Oh
have
my
books of 5 years. So in this current book, I'm on my 3rd year. So every night I'm able to read what I did. And so, a lot of that was COVID stuff. So it's really interesting to read what I was thinking 2 years ago today.
That's
So
amazing.
I write in my 5-year journal. Anyone who's new in recovery or new-ish, first 5 years, start writing in a 5-year journal, because you'll be amazed watching yourself grow and transform in that format. It's a really cool way to see it happen. It also gives me an interesting sense of the pacing of time,
Mhm.
because some things I can't believe that was a year ago and not 3 months ago. And things seem like they were 4 years ago, like it's
Yeah.
hard. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and then I read my nightly reader, which for years now has been Rumi. I read a page out of the Rumi
Ooh.
book. So I think it's called A Year with Rumi, and the editor is
Okay.
or the translator is Coleman Barks. It's so beautiful. It just speaks to
Coleman.
my soul. It just
Coleman
elevates. And
Barks.
Coleman Barks. Yeah.
Barks. Okay. I am totally going to check that out. I've been wanting to read Rumi for a while because I get snippets or
Hmm.
singular things, and it's always so deep and profound.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, I'm totally going to check that out. And
Yeah.
the 5-year journal. So you know what's funny? I thought you were going to say the 5-minute journal, because that's what I do.
Mm. Oh, okay. What's a 5-minute journal?
The 5-minute journal is so good. So it's 3 things that I'm grateful for, and I do 3 different things every day. I try to do 3
Right.
different ones every day. One little one, like this morning, was the grass is kind of long, so the dew on the tips, like when the sun rises, I get
Mm.
sparkles on the grass. So I
Mm.
love the morning sparkles. Um, I signed a contract to get some support on this book publishing exercise I'm doing. So that was like a big thing. So like a little thing, a big thing, and then just something that brings me joy. And yesterday it was like making soap or publishing a little content or whatever, just something like that.
Yeah.
And then it's 3 things that would make the day great. And I'm very focused on some goals right now. So 3 things that would make the day great, and then a positive affirmation. And then there is a space that I fill up the next morning, which is 3 highlights of the day and what did I learn today. And when I'm doing it in the morning, I take a picture of it and text it to a couple friends for sort of like
Oh, fun.
accountability. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they send me theirs. They get mine, and it's a nice way to connect and then practice all the things. And it sort of gears my brain to looking. It's about being intentional about what I want to manifest in my life, and it helps me to focus on gratitude.
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it.
So that's
Yeah.
a good one
Gratitude
too.
practice is so good. I forgot to mention I incorporate a gratitude practice into my evening routine when I get on my knees and I thank God for the day. I um I think through 5 and I just count them on one hand. I pray in child's pose, so I'm like in full
Oh,
prostration.
yeah.
And so I've got my fingertips there and I just count off 5. I think of a memory from the day that just
Mm.
bursts my heart with gratitude. And I just
Oh,
visualize it and I feel that little heart explosion. And then I count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I just think of 5 of those. And it's just my way to recount the day with gratitude. I think it's so important to
brilliant.
have a gratitude practice of some kind. And what I find is because the brain adapts so quickly to whatever habits we establish, you don't want your gratitude practice to get stale. So it's
Right.
really helpful to switch it up. That's what I find is I switch
Oh,
up my
for
gratitude
sure.
practice pretty often so that it's always feeling fresh and alive. Like you said, writing different things. You don't just say, I'm grateful for my husband, my kids, like what I
My
mean,
health, my
you know,
sobriety.
and to someone who doesn't have, a partner or kids, they might go, yeah, bitch, but like, you know, grateful for my husband and my kids and my big fat house and my 2 cars. So grateful. I don't mean it like that, but
Which of
whatever
course you are.
I'm grateful for life and health and, food on the table, like just, you
Hilarious.
got to keep it fresh. Yeah.
No, you're so right. You're so right. It does. The point is not to be rote about it,
Yeah.
right? Because you know what I heard recently? I don't know if you follow the Andrew Huberman
I love
Huberman
him.
app.
Yes. I
Oh
don't listen
my
to it all the
God.
time, but I love him.
I
Yeah.
know he's a little heady. Like, so I need to have like be in the right space. Did
Well,
you see his
his and my
picture?
PhDs are pretty much right along. I mean, I have a PhD in brain and cognitive sciences, so I follow his
Yes.
stuff pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, of course you do. Of course
Yeah.
you do. But he's very like practical. So somebody like me can follow along.
Yeah.
Someone goofy like me. Um, no, but I love all that stuff. I find it endlessly fascinating. I can't seem to read enough about it. But I bring him up because he was talking about a different slant on the gratitude practice, which was to remember times people were grateful for you. I was like, "Ooh, isn't that good?"
Oh, so good.
Yeah, because we do
Mm.
you do a ton of service work, and all your outward facing work is to really you and I are so aligned in mission of like we just want to help. We just want to help alleviate unnecessary suffering, and there are people who receive it, right?
Yeah.
And it feels like I get to listen, they are doing me when someone says thank you to me, they're doing when someone allows me to be of service, they're doing me way more good than I'm doing them. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Because it's hard to feel like a piece of shit about yourself if you're looking into the eyes of gratitude. If someone goes, "Oh my God, thank you. That helped me so much." It's like, oh my gosh, all I want is to live my purpose, to be in service, like to be helpful to others, like sincerely. And when somebody receives it, oh my gosh, it's like the energy flows all the way through and it
Yeah.
comes all the way back. We're still linked that way. So I love that idea of, and I'm sure you get messages a lot. I know we were talking before how when you see somebody who discovers who you are, or I'm sure, are they more familiar with your name than your face at this point?
No,
You get the face.
yeah, I have a lot of face recognition because I put a lot of videos out into the
You
world,
do.
a lot of
Yeah,
videos.
a lot.
And people who go through my courses, like over 100,000 people
Oh
now around the world
my
have
God.
been through my online courses, and my online courses are just basically videos of me talking
Okay.
about stuff.
Okay.
So I get a lot of face recognition, and it's interesting because I'm having a real interesting reaction to that notion of remembering when others have been grateful for us, because when I got the message in my morning meditation, um, coming up on 10 years ago, in January, it'll be 10 years. It was January 26th of 2014. And the message was to write a book called Bright Line Eating. And in short order, I could feel, I just knew how much of an impact Bright Line Eating was going to have and how successful it was going to be. And along with that came sort of a premonition of myself becoming somewhat famous, right? Like it was going to take off. And I had a little reckoning with my higher power because I was sort of like, God, are you for real about this? Because I've been working steps 6 and 7, asking for help with my ego for so many years. And now WTF, God, like, really? Are you now saying go do this work? And like, are
Yeah.
you testing me, teasing me, messing with me? Like, what's going on here, God?
I
And
see that.
and so what's ended up happening is that because I'm so wary, like I've tried so hard in step 6 and 7 over decades to shed the excess ego that I seem to have been born with, like just this head that just keeps growing and growing. I don't want it. Like when people come at me with all their, "Oh, you're Susan Pierce Thompson, you've changed my life, you've changed my life." I'm sort of like, a part of me is like, yuck, like get away from me with that. I just want to be another bozo on the bus,
Mm,
I don't feel yuck toward them. I feel loving toward
yeah.
them.
Right.
But the extra accolades or adoration feels like sticky, yucky, slimy ego goo that I don't want. So what I end up doing is kind of ducking to the left and letting the compliment fly right over my right shoulder, like not mine to
Mm,
catch. I'm not letting that stick on me. And so at the same time, there is a lot of like people have sent me very thoughtful, heartfelt, beautiful care packages of love, of like beautiful thing, books and notes and artwork and all these, like, Susan, blah, blah, blah. I want you to know you're making a difference. And the truth is that I'm not doing as much as I probably should do, honoring their gratitude with being a good
Mm.
receiver of it. And so, I think my initial reaction to just duck and let it fly over my shoulder might be fine just for my own spiritual practice. But at the same time, I do also, what you're saying is really resonating my spiritual bell here. It's ringing my bell around, like, I could do well to sit and remember some of those instances and savor them more than I allowed myself to in that moment.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's like having a balanced perspective. And I get the recoil from, if you're very in touch with not wanting to bolster the ego, like wanting to remain grounded and authentic to who you are, staying right-sized. I get the recoil, but I appreciate your thoughtfulness about considering the idea of receiving, because why not? Why not
Hmm.
you? Why not? You're doing good work. And it, any excuse to have joy in our heart. I've been really obsessed with sort of following the joy lately.
Mm,
And yeah, it doesn't seem ego-centered to follow the joy. Like that's what God wants for us, is to be
yeah.
joyful. Like if this whole life of sobriety was not joyful and expansive, like how is that attractive? Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
let's transition. Since we're kind of flowing in that direction, I would love to hear your story as you would love to tell it. You and I are accustomed to the what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. But I love interjecting some questions. Like I'm as someone who does coaching and stuff like that, I am always fascinated with the family of origin. And I read a little bit about your mom, not a whole lot about your dad. Like, I'm so curious, what were your parents like, and what was your relationship like to them?
Oh, yeah. My parents are great. So my parents were hippies
Yeah,
when I was
San
born.
Francisco hippies.
They were They were both living in
Oh,
communes, different communes in Colorado. They met in like 1972-ish, and they were on acid, and my dad had just gotten let out of jail in Utah because he'd been arrested or something for buying all of the supplies for the commune, the big tubs of sugar, flour, honey, rice, whatever, with a stolen credit card. And they got a break. They were going to be in jail forever in Utah, and they got a break and they got walked out the back door. Anyway, there was a big, like, all the
wow.
communes celebrated. Joseph and Easy got let out of jail. It's amazing. It's a miracle. Everybody party at blah, blah commune this weekend. So my mom and dad were dancing on acid at this commune party, celebrating my dad's release from jail. Anyway, my dad was not a criminal. He was a sweet, sweet guy. Daily pot smoker though. And my mom was, 22 probably, and my dad was like 30, 31. And they fell in love kind of immediately, and they bought a motorcycle and started traveling around the world. So they went south through Mexico. They took their time. I was conceived in a brothel that they were renting a room in for $1 in Costa Rica. And my mom turned to my dad. Okay, so just to say, my mother's name was Mary. My father's name was Joseph. I'm an only child, so that'll fuck with you on an acid trip. Just have to say.
And
Um,
they were riding on a motorcycle.
yeah, they were riding on a motorcycle around the world. And my mom turned to my dad and said, "Joseph, I'm pregnant." And he said, "Oh gosh, really? Okay. How far along are you?" And she said, "Just now." So they're lying together in the back of this brothel.
15
Anyway,
minutes.
yeah, 15 minutes ago. So my mom decided not to have an abortion. That was like a little check-in with herself.
Mhm.
She, ended up
She
having
thought
like
about it.
4 abortions after me. I was an only child.
Oh, wow.
But she decided to keep me. She had a spiritual experience that said, you keep this one. And so they made it down to the southern tip of South America and flew back, hawked the bike for plane fare back to the States. when my mom was 9 months pregnant. They landed in San Francisco because they heard it was groovy, and got a little apartment on Guerrero Street. And I was born on my due date, and my parents had no occupations, no nothing. And they ended up importing alpaca wool from a cottage industry in Cochabamba, Bolivia, that they discovered, and selling these beautiful hand woven rugs and ruanas and sweaters and stuff, partially in San Francisco, partially in Aspen, Colorado. So we were kind of all over the place. When I was 0 to 4 years old, we lived in 44 places. Basically, we didn't live anywhere. We were kind of nomadic a little bit. But my mom counted up the places, like, well, we were here for 3 months, and then we went there for a month, and then we went, 44 places. But my mom and dad were both there. And I was like, a little baby in a rucksack, like on my dad's hip, as they were just going about in A-frames and hippie buses and communes and stuff like that. And then when I was 4, they got divorced and they settled officially in San Francisco. My mom got an apartment. My dad got a different apartment. And my mom opened a shop in Fisherman's Wharf called the Atrium, in a complex called the Anchorage, across the street from the cannery, pretty close to where the cable car dead ends
sure.
there,
Yeah.
in Fisherman's Wharf, really close to there. And I was kind of a latchkey kid. I was raised by both my mom and my dad. My dad became a cab driver, and my mom ran that little shop. And I was just raised 4 nights at my mom's house, 3 nights at my dad's house every week, shuttling back and forth. And I was very, very close to both my mom and my dad. They're both intelligent, loving, warm, communicative people. There were challenges with my upbringing. Like, there wasn't a lot of structure. My mom tried to put structure in there. My dad would just unravel it. Every time I go to my dad's house, he's like, you don't need to brush your teeth at night. Like, once a day is good enough. Maybe in the afternoon sometime. I go back to my mom's house. She's like, no. Right before bed every night, you need to brush your teeth. And so, my mom basically felt like she was trying to reparent me from scratch every week. But I had a blast with my dad. Like, we'd go out to, a big Chinese meal and then go see an R-rated movie at 10 o'clock at night. And then we'd come back to because he worked nights as a cab driver. So he was just a night owl. And, then we'd watch Monty Hall's Let's Make a Deal. And then I'd fall asleep in bed next to him as the McNeil Air News Hour came on. And that would always put me to sleep, on the VHS tape, because he recorded
of course.
tape. Yeah. So my parents are amazing. And I wanted what I wanted when I wanted it. And I'm sure you'll have questions now about how my addiction came in there, but yeah, that was sort of my upbringing.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a lot of times people can't, when they get sober, they go back to childhood and they're able to identify or trace, some underlying trauma, whether it's feelings of abandonment or not belonging. There's a lot of that. I never felt right in my skin. And as you were talking about that, I would imagine, listen, I know that you have like super high IQ and you've been able to do all these. You're smart. Your parents are really smart. Do you have memories from when you were really little from them being together?
I do have memory. I have memories of being very, very young.
That's wild.
And I remember my whole childhood. There was not trauma in my childhood, particularly. However, I was not popular in school. I was a rejected kid socially.
Ooh, brutal.
And I'm reasonably smart now. I was wicked smart as a kid. I was, they had my IQ tested when I was 6. They're like, something's going on with this kid. And they had my IQ tested and they wouldn't tell me what the results were. My dad let a lot of it slip out when I was like 10 or something. But my IQ dropped 40 points from the drug use that I did as a teenager. So I'm left with a good enough IQ, but I had a very rare IQ when I was a kid. And it resulted, one of the challenges of it was that I didn't have high IQ social skills. I had high IQ math intellect. And so I would correct my teacher's work on the board. I had my hand up for every last thing to say this, I kind of, when I was in a classroom, I just wanted to learn. I was like a vacuum cleaner for information. So I was just like me and the teacher, and all the kids were like, would she shut up? like, fuck, like this
Oh,
classroom would work so much better if she wasn't here.
yeah.
So
So, oh my
yeah.
gosh. Yeah,
So I
they were,
was rejected socially, and it really was painful. I
yeah.
pretended like I didn't care, but I did care. I didn't quite get it. I thought I was doing a great job of convincing them how great I was, and I didn't
Mhm.
understand why they didn't like me.
Yeah.
So
So do you
that
think
was
that
supposed to
that
be a
was kind
joke.
of,
It's like that really was my
oh,
strategy, was like, I'm convincing you I'm really great. You should love
yeah.
me. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it didn't work.
Didn't work out. Yeah, kids are funny that way.
Ah,
So do you
so
feel like
painful.
that's kind of at the root of the dis-ease, discomfort, not feeling, is that was like you were trying to
So,
escape?
so yeah, so from 5th to 8th grade, I ended up going to a private school on scholarship that was all girls. It's called Miss Catherine Delmar Burke School in San Francisco. And, little blue sailor suit uniforms. And it wasn't Catholic, it was just private and wealthy. And we were not wealthy. We did not have a car. I lived way across town. I took 2 long city buses, muni buses, to get there. It took me an hour to get there by myself in the morning. And a lot of these kids were dropped off by chauffeurs or nannies in their Mercedeses and BMWs. And I was not accepted or popular there either. And but I was a good student. And I got straight A's, perfect test scores. And then it was a private school, and applying to private high schools was a big deal. And I fixated somehow on wanting to go to boarding school on the East Coast. And I
Mm.
wanted to go to Exeter or Andover. Those are the top 2 schools. And I didn't want to go anywhere else. And so I didn't apply anywhere else. And my mom and the guidance counselor both tried to convince me to apply to other places. And I brushed off their warnings that I was applying to schools with very low acceptance rates and no backup schools. And I didn't get into either school.
Mm.
And I ended up having to go to the local public school, which was a pretty scary place compared to where I had gone, but it was co-ed. So now I'm going from being 13 to 14 years old. It was that summer. And the embarrassment and the kind of reeling that I felt not getting into any high schools
Mm.
and going from the top of the class to, like, now as everyone's going off to their nice schools, the sort of kicked down to the bottom rung of the social ladder, and also having, at this point accumulated maybe 8 years of pretty intense social rejection. What I found at that public high school was it felt like an unsafe place, in the sense that there were a lot of drugs, a lot of guns, a lot of knives, a lot of graffiti, a lot of gangs.
Mhm.
And I found my way to the back field, where people were wearing excessive eyeliner and listening to The Cure and wearing a lot of black and
Depeche Mode.
Depeche Mode and sneaking in their beer and their cigarettes. And I was, I just turned 14 years old, and the guys were like, "Hey, what's your name?" And I think that's what it was. It was the
Yeah.
combination of boys and acceptance and just the big sigh of relief of, like, yeah, I'll take a beer.
Yeah.
That
I
sounds
find
really good right about now.
even those of us that were like, I felt very similar to you, like totally rejected, but the stoners were always my friends, the druggies,
Yeah.
the people, the kids that drank, they always accepted me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We all needed a place to
Exactly.
belong. And attention from boys? Are you kidding me?
Totally.
Oh my God. Such a
Yeah,
high.
it actually started for me the summer before I got to that school. I did mushrooms. It was my first experience
Oh,
with
that's right. Yeah.
drugs, and it was at a UB40 concert. And
I read that
ironically,
in the book and I almost fell out of my chair. I'm all red wine.
red wine all night long on the radio
Yeah.
stations because UB40 was in town. So it became the
Huge.
anthem of my
Red,
alcoholism. Totally.
red wine.
Yeah.
Did you drink any wine?
Not that
Really?
night. I loved red wine though. Red wine and tequila were my 2 drinks of choice.
Lord have mercy.
Red wine and tequila, and any of the, like, mushrooms, acid, ecstasy family, like
Yeah.
any, like, that's kind of my idea of that. Well, that
But it
was my
was
idea of a good time.
check out and have fun with friends. And
Yeah, it was really, my alcoholism and my drug addiction were really like stepping out into the world, like stepping out onto the white hot tip and pushing the envelope. You know, I wasn't really I'm going to do this alone and hate myself kind of person. It was really like, let's do it together and it's on, baby. You know,
Yeah.
I was really kind of the, when parents don't want their kids to fall in with the wrong crowd, I was the wrong crowd. Like I was the one I was the one who was spending Monday through Friday figuring out where we were going to get enough shit to get really fucked up on this weekend. That was my job with all my excess brain cells. That's what I did Monday
Girl,
through
we would have been
Friday.
friends. We would have been friends.
Because
Oh
let's
my
be
God.
honest, at 14, procurement's not a trivial thing. Like, where
It
are we
is
getting
not.
this? You know, like,
Yeah, in the quantities that we needed it.
totally. Like, yeah, my grandma had some cases of red wine in the basement, but like,
That went quick.
exactly.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so the progression sounds like the progression happened pretty fast, but it makes total sense to me because if you're deprived of that need to belong, and this is actually a very legitimate need. You know, you
Yeah.
talk about being a latchkey kid, like great. I'm glad you had such a good relationship with your parents. I would imagine that the divorce was challenging on you, but you know, if we have
Can
this,
I pause there? Because it
sure.
wasn't. And I feel like
The
this story
divorce
needs to
wasn't
be
hard.
told. No, it was not. Because my parents were beautiful human beings and
Mm,
loved each other and stayed loving to each other. And the divorce happened on a move from Aspen. We were mostly staying in Aspen at the time, and we moved to San Francisco. I remember the U-Haul. I remember the trip. I remember being nervous and worried about it. What do you mean
mm,
you're moving into different apartments? And my
yeah.
dad said, come here, kid, ride with me. And I rode with him in the U-Haul for a bit. And he said, it's not going to be hard. It's going to be fine. We love you. Nothing's changing except we're going to have 2 apartments. And I said, do I get my own room in each? And he said, yeah, you're going to go from having 1 bedroom to 2 bedrooms. And I did the math and I was like, that's a good deal. He said, it is a good deal. You're moving up in the world, kiddo. This is going to be fine. Mary and I love each other and we love you and nothing's
Oh,
changing. And they went to go get divorced at City Hall in San Francisco. And the judge was about to sign the papers and then looked to page 4 or whatever and said, wait a second, you have a kid? And they're like, yeah. And he's like, well, hold on a second, like custody and what? And Joseph, my dad, said, give custody to Mary. And the judge said, Joseph, you can't do that. You're signing away your rights as a parent. He said, I don't need you to tell me what my rights as a parent are. Mary's not going to screw me over. Give full custody to
wow.
Mary. We'll handle it. It's going to be fine. I strongly urge you not to do that, Mr. Fleischman. Yeah, thanks, Judge. Let's sign the papers. We want to go out to Chinese lunch and it's 2:00 already. Can we get out of here? And my mother never did screw over my dad. And my dad came over for holidays and brought his girlfriend, and my mom had her boyfriend, and everyone got along. And still today, my dad's 83 now. My
Mm.
mom is 74, and they each live with their spouses here in Rochester, New York. And they were all over at my house 3 nights ago. And my mom is like best friends with my dad's wife. So I just want to say,
Oh.
research shows that divorce is hard on kids when it's contentious.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's hard on kids, is conflict between people that they love, whether it's
Yeah.
happening in the house or outside of the house.
Yeah.
And my parents loved each other, and so it was not hard on me. So
That's
I just wanted to
beautiful.
say, because
Yeah.
for anyone who's getting divorced and has kids, it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be hard on them if put on your adult, pants and
Yeah. That's a
yeah.
very unique circumstance. People typically break up because something happened or they don't get along anymore or whatever. It's not usually a pleasant. Well, and I'm not saying that it was pleasant,
Yeah.
but
I
that's
mean,
not
yeah. I mean, my
your
dad was doing
circumstance is
some
not the
cocaine
norm.
and he was screaming at my mom too much and she didn't want it anymore. So it wasn't all perfect, but like really fundamentally they did what everyone intends to do, I think, which is to think about their kids, their
Yeah.
kid and stay nice. And they really did. I think they kept having sex for a few years after they got
Yeah. That's
divorced,
pretty common.
here and there. Yeah.
It's hard to let go. Hard to
Yeah.
let go of someone you love. I hear makeup sex is good, but I don't know about that.
Well, I'll vouch. It is very good.
Okay, good. I don't know where that came from. Anyways, all right. So listen, it's not that you didn't have plenty of issues. The childhood trauma, yes, parents, it didn't come from the parents. I'm happy to hear that. But that period of not belonging and fitting in and being different,
Mm.
so painful. So it makes sense to me. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. I get why, I get why you fell into drugs and kind of went down that road. And just kind of just walk me through as much as you or as little as you want to talk about like how dark it got and the progression, and then we'll kind of transition to, the turning point in terms of how you stopped using drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. So the progression was there was a long stretch of time where it was really just fun, and it was mostly on the weekends. It wasn't all on the weekends. I would sometimes drink a bottle of red wine with a friend in Golden Gate Park, or a bottle of red wine with a boyfriend on Ocean Beach, and stumble home at 2 a.m. I started staying out later and later. I would sometimes, there was a liquor store that would sell to me when I was 15. They got
Wow.
shut down for selling to underage kids. But for a while they were open, and I would get a bottle of tequila and drink it on a Tuesday night or whatever. But I was doing also a lot of acid, mushrooms, and ecstasy whenever I could get my hands on it. And it was it was consequence free until I was about 16. So 14, 15. And then when I was 16, I took 2 hits of acid and didn't come down for 3 weeks.
Like a
And
psychotic break type
yeah,
of thing?
a psychotic break. Exactly.
Oh,
Like
okay.
like schizophrenia, like a
Ooh,
full psychotic break.
oh shit.
And and I thought I was the return of Christ, and
Mm.
yeah, it was just I was gone. And it was from then on, in the progression of my disease, whenever I would step a little close to the edge, I would be not well. I'd be in a psychotic episode, and
Wow.
so that was the first consequence. I dropped out of high school.
Mhm.
Some of it was college applications were starting to loom, and I'd already not gotten into high schools. I was scared to have to write those essays and all that.
You wanted to go to Harvard?
I wanted to go to Harvard. Exactly. I wanted to go to
Mm.
Harvard, or MIT or Vassar. My dad took me on a great trip of all the East Coast schools,
Oh,
all of them,
cool.
Brown,
Yeah.
every Ivy League school, Wesleyan, Amherst, Williams, all the schools,
Yeah.
Vassar. And I wanted to go to one of those schools. But, this was back in the day when there was no common application. Every school required its own 8 essays or whatever. It would have been a nightmare to apply to all those schools. And so then I met Johnny. I feel like we all have
We all have a
that
Johnny.
what we all have a Johnny, right? Then I met Johnny, and then it escalated to
Mm.
now we're snorting crystal meth, and
Ah,
crystal meth, because I already had a weight problem and a food problem.
right.
And so crystal meth really took care of that for me. I was more stunned by how much it made me not want to eat addictively than I was anything. I would just blew my mind, the freedom from food obsession that came with a few rails or one rail of crystal meth. And I fell in love with crystal meth. And I dropped out of high school and started playing pool and snorting rails of crystal meth.
What did your parents, I mean, they must have been
Yeah.
terrified. What was their response to all
Yeah.
this?
They were terrified. They were terrified. And I was very persuasive. When I was dropping out of high school, it was a couple things. One, they could see that I was spinning out anyway, right? Like they could tell that
I mean, a 3 week
something had to
psychotic break.
change.
Did they
Yeah.
put you in a hospital for that?
My dad did not. My dad kept me in the back of his house, and
For three
I mean,
weeks.
they saw that in the hippie communes. People would dose up
Oh,
and not come back. He saw it, and he said
okay. He knew what to
in
do,
well,
kind
what
of.
he knew was that 50-50 she's ever coming back. Those were the odds that he saw, because it happened a lot. People would do a lot of drugs and they would go crazy. And 50-50 it would, but he's like, there's nothing you can do. He just loved me. I would make muffins and throw the tin at the wall and scream and blah, blah, blah. He just loved me, and he kept me. My dad was real counterculture. Like he would never turn
Mm.
his little girl over to the man. Basically, he was
Oh,
not gonna
yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
put me in the
And
system.
your mom, did she want you to be hospitalized?
I don't know. She's probably calling my dad Joseph. What do we do?
Yeah.
And so it was scary. Johnny moved in with me and my mom like the first night. He came over for a piece of pie and never left. And
Where was his family? Did he not have a family?
he was 19
Oh,
and he'd just gotten out of jail, and his dad was an alcoholic asshole, and his mom lived up in
oh,
Oregon. Yeah, no, he didn't have a family that was
he needed
looking for him.
a safe
He
haven.
he needed a place to live is what he
Mm.
needed. I didn't realize he'd walked out of jail that day. He didn't have a place to live.
Oh, that's when you met him, is the day
So
he got out of jail.
yeah, the day he
Got
got out of
it.
jail, he
Okay,
showed
that's
up
in
at the
the book.
cafe that I was, smoking cigarettes and playing solitaire at. And I took him home for a piece of pie, homemade piece of pie, and he never left. Yeah. And so, a month later, my mom's sheepishly asking him to chip in $100 a month for the rent, like,
Mhm.
so anyway, then things got bad with Johnny, and I was really hooked on crystal meth. I quit crystal meth. My dad really helped me quit that. Just talking to me and convincing me I did not look good as skinny as I was, and just yeah, talking with me. And I quit crystal meth and was on my feet again for a little bit, but then turned to cocaine, and then started freebasing cocaine, and then started smoking crack. And somewhere in the middle of that progression, I learned how to be a call girl. And I
Mhm.
started making a lot of money, which I needed when I started smoking crack. It's very expensive to have a heavy crack cocaine habit.
Mhm.
And
So you were young when you were doing that, the call girl stuff.
I think I did it for the first time when I was 18, and then I ended right the day that I got sober, I put it down. So,
Okay.
to 20, but I wasn't doing it steadily that whole time. It was a blip here, a blip there, a blip there. And then I worked, when I was 19, I really kind of dove into it and started making like $1,000 a night, kind of cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching.
Mhm.
And, the what do you call them? The dispatchers at the agency dubbed me
Mhm.
rookie of the year because I seem to always be down for another call. I was
You
like, I
are an
don't care. Oh,
overachiever.
I was over.
You're
Yeah, like
always an
I'll go out again.
overachiever.
Yeah, like it's fine. I mean, I would have done it for free. Like I was kind of like, this is kind of
I know
fun.
it sounds like a little an little element of sex addiction or love addiction somewhere in the mix, but
I mean,
um,
well, also like I was kind of like a therapist. There was a lot of sweet, lonely guys that just wanted
oh
some company. And
yeah,
I showed up with my whole heart and not a bunch of rules of like, you can't kiss me on the lips and I'm not talking, like I just showed up and was like, hey, you got me for an hour. Now that I got your cash, you got me for an hour. What do how
yeah,
can I be helpful? It
yeah.
felt like service calls.
I'm sure it wasn't all therapy though.
Yeah.
I
I mean, I
mean,
probably had sex with half of them.
yeah.
On average, I think once
Can
I
I just
realized that.
say I have never spoken about this publicly, but I remember in the throes of my addiction, listen, I was a weed girl, so my habit wasn't that expensive. It was expensive, but I remember being young and broke and afraid and seriously considering, I knew a guy who was older and had tons of money and a lot of rich friends his age that were like, well, if you need some extra cash, and I seriously considered it,
Mm,
and I think a lot of women in that situation do, and I don't feel like it's talked about all that much. So I really appreciate
yeah.
you talking about it.
Well, it's interesting because I often talk about it in a sentence and leave people with the impression that I was a victimized, drug addicted young woman who made a terrible choice and, needed the money to smoke crack. And while it is, it's true that it's not a choice I would make today. And I was smoking up that money pretty fast. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Um, I was having a lot of sex before I became a sex worker, and I liked sex a lot, and I liked the powerful feeling that I got from being wanted and
Mhm.
flirting, and I feel like I got out of it, like stopped being a call girl right at the juncture of where it was about to start being harmful to my soul. And I feel
Mm,
like what I did at that time does not feel like it left huge scars on me. Thank you, God. I don't know how that's possible, but it feels true for me.
mm,
And it was just yet another way that I stepped out onto the white hot tip of life. It's something I've done over and over again in different ways, whether it's having my skydiving license or, um, you know, there's just, having an orgy or, whatever it is, like there's things I've done that have just been out on that edge, and,
Yeah.
anyway,
I love
so
that about you. I love that about you. I think that's so amazing. And I like that you're channeling this in a different way. This,
yeah.
yeah, because, putting out Bright Line Eating, I'm sure has, stepping out into the place of where other people are, uncomfortable being, myself included,
Yeah.
to some
Well,
extent.
and when I wrote my first book, Bright Line Eating, and wrote my story, there was definitely the question mark of, what am I gonna say about that? And I thought about it. I talked to my dad, I talked to my husband, and debated and debated and debated. I don't think I say it super explicitly in the first book. I think I allude to it a little bit. If you want to read between the lines, it might be there. But I started talking about it really candidly, like on podcasts and stuff. And now it's what I appreciate is that no one's got any dirt on me because I've shared all the
I
dirt. You
know.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Can't hurt
uh
me now.
he can't hurt me now. It's the Eminem defense. I am white. I am a
Uh-huh.
bum. I do live in a trailer park with
I
my
was
mom. If
just
you've seen
gonna
Eight
say.
Mile,
I was
like
just gonna
now,
say.
now tell me what you want to say about me,
Yeah, yeah, no ammo against me because I own it all. And the thing is that people tend to receive information with the tone that you deliver it, with the, you know what I mean? It's like with the
Right.
intention that you deliver it. So if you're like, oh my God, it's a cowgirl, people are like, oh shit. But if you were like, yeah, it's a thing that happened, let's keep it moving. That's kind of what I get from you. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like no shame. It's like, I heard you on Lewis Howes and you were just like, yeah, this is what happened. And I almost, he almost was like squirming in his chair a little bit. What do you mean? I thought that was kind of funny. That was a great interview, by the way.
Thank you.
You
Thank
were
you.
good. You were good on that one. But yeah, okay. So,
Moment of
um,
clarity, turning point. Should we go
yes, thank
there?
you. Yes. What happened?
So what happened? So yeah, so that was what it was like. And what happened was I just turned 20. I was a call girl in San Francisco. So I'd moved back up from San Jose to San Francisco. Um, I wasn't really living anywhere. I honestly don't remember where I laid my head, night after night that summer. Cause I'd been kicked out of my dad's house. He said, "You're not welcome here until you change."
He knew what you
And
were doing.
he found out what I was doing because I didn't have an address. And so when I signed up for that agency, because some clients would pay with a credit card, you had to, like, that actually is W-2 income. So I was actually like an employee of the Party Time Temporaries agency. And I listed
Is
my
that really
dad's.
what it was called?
Yeah, Party Time Temporaries. I only found that out because I got a W-2 tax form, which went to my dad's house. And when my dad got the W-2 sent in the mail, because I didn't have an address, so I put my dad's address down.
And he opened your mail.
And well, he hadn't seen me in weeks, right? So he's like, "What the hell is this?" Yeah,
What
he
is
opened it. And then it's like this W-2 for, like, I mean, that was a fraction of, most people paid in cash, right? So that was a fraction of it. He's like, "What the hell is it?"
Oh,
He's like, "Oh, my dad was a cab driver at night in San Francisco. Like,
all
it's not
right.
like
He
the
knew
man
what's
didn't
up.
know what was happening in
He
his
knew.
city."
Yeah.
So what happened was I just turned 20. It was a Tuesday morning. I was in a crack hotel, the Mission Hotel on Mission in South Van Ness.
Oof.
And I had a
Fancy?
oh no, this is a pay by the hour / day
Just
/
kidding.
week / cockroach infest,
Yeah.
cockroaches and rats are free, you know. um yeah, and I was in this room with Joe Brown, who was kind of he just had the room, and I would bring crack, and so we had a deal, it was a fair trade. And I had a shaved head, not like Sinead O'Connor buzzed head, and a blonde wig on my head, like literally a platinum blonde bob wig on my head. And it was Tuesday morning, so I think I'd been there all weekend, smoking crack around the clock. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Now it's Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. One of those binges of like days. And so my skin feels like hamburger meat, and there's a couple kicking heroin over to my side. I'm not on the bed. I'm like sitting with my back against the bed, and they're twitching over to my left. Joe Brown's passed out on the bed, sleeping. And there was still crack rock on the table. I remember that very vividly. I think there was a bottle of Jack Daniels. There usually was. And what happened was I suddenly was there, like present, awake to it. And I got a bird's eye view awareness of what my life had become, what I had expected it to be, you know, the Harvard, MIT expectations that I'd had. And then this path, you know, I was now 20. I hadn't been in school in a long time. And I'd had already, I guess, 3 big cycles of my alcohol and drug use escalating and then me quitting on my own and lasting a little bit, then picking up a beer because beer was never my problem, and then it escalating again and ending up in jail. I've been in jail twice already at that point. And I got this image of like, I don't think it was an image. I think it was a feeling of my life path was forking on that moment. My life path was forking. And I could either get up and get out of there right at that moment, or I became certain, absolutely clear, that if I did not, my life would never end from this. It would be more cycles of prostitution and drug addiction and alcoholism and getting clean and getting things together a little bit and then relapsing back into it. And that was going to be my life forever. And I knew that. And I sat with that knowing for a few heartbeats. And then I just picked up my jacket and I walked out the door. And I got out to the 10 a.m. Tuesday morning of downtown San Francisco near Market Street. And I was driving a Mercedes at the time, which was my grandmother's car that had been, it was a 67 Mercedes. My mom was in India at the time studying with BKS Iyengar, and she was not around that summer at all, but I had her car keys. And so I was driving her car and I got into that car and then I had nowhere to go. I didn't know where to go. So I went over to Baltazar's house. He was a billionaire who lived in a high rise in San Francisco. So I went over to his house. He opened the door. I could see on his expression that I smelled and looked terrible. And he pointed me to the back room. He was doing business deals with Tokyo and Italy. And he just pointed me to the back room and I slept. And then I woke up and I showered. And I felt pretty good again. And I put my pager on my hip because I was going to go back out and trick that night. And I oriented myself to the day, to the night. Now it's nighttime, right? Because I just slept for a few hours. Now it's nighttime. And I had a date, Arlena, that night, not for money. This was like a cute guy that I'd met first date. He was super cute. He was as cute as they come. And I'd met him at a gas station at 3 a.m. And he was a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he took me to an AA meeting on our first date that night. And that meeting was called Tuesday Downtown. It was in San Francisco. It was in the basement of Grace Cathedral. And it was a speaker chip meeting. They manufactured their own chips. I still have it. It said AA Tuesday Downtown on one side, and it said 24 hours on the other side. I got a 24-hour coin that night. And there were hundreds of people there. It was a massive meeting, just speakers and chips. That's it. So one speaker and chips. And, just like at a convention where they start going, keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back. When they get down to the wee hours of sobriety, right? When they do the sobriety countdown.
Yeah.
And I had 24 hours. So everyone was like exploding with cheers and high fives. And I walked down this huge long aisle. I felt like I was at the Academy Awards to get this 24-hour coin. Oh, keep coming back, keep coming back. And I got 5 hugs up at the front of the room, and I got this coin. This meeting was so organized. They had people assigned to different like sections of the room to track the newcomers and greet every newcomer in their section.
Wow.
And so after the meeting, someone came up to me and said, "You're new, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said they were kind of frantic about it because they probably had like 6 other people to talk to before everyone dispersed. And they're like, "Go back to the literature table and buy a big book and read Bill's story." And they like shoved me back there toward these tables. And I got back there and there were all these big folding tables with like books and coins and all this stuff. And I'm like looking and I'm buy a big book and read Bill's story. And I'm looking over the stuff and I don't see any especially large books. And I don't see any book.
There's nothing that's called big book.
Big book. So I wander away. I'm like, they're out of the big books tonight, I guess. And so anyway, so I've stayed sober since that day. And that was 29 years ago.
That is so crazy.
Thank you, God. Yeah.
Thank you, God. That's amazing. And man, what a journey. And so you dove in and did the 12 steps, and like you got the sponsor and you did the steps. I mean, you're still doing step 4s and
still doing the steps. Yeah. I got a sponsor. You know, my first sponsor was someone who'd just been taken through the book. I think she had 4 or 5 or 6 months of sobriety, and she found me. And she's like, "Is someone taking you through the book?" I was just looking lost, you know, at a meeting, reading the bulletin board or something. And she's like, "My name's Rachel. Is anyone taking you through the book?" And I was like, I mean, still the what book, right? What book? I still didn't know
what
about
is this big book you
What is
of?
this book? And she said, "My name's Rachel. I'll be taking you through the book." And so, you know, we got a highlighter and a pen, you know, and like a dictionary and like really went through it, you know.
That is magical. So a lot of people, I didn't hear a whole lot of God when you were growing up. I know your mom was like into yoga and all that stuff. She must have been talking about spirituality at least. Did you
yoga, astrology, the I Ching? My dad, she wanted to start taking me to church or something, like just give me some kind of spiritual grounding. My dad threw a fit and insisted, and he put his foot down. He said, he said, "No." He said, "That is not okay. You will not indoctrinate her with any religion. You will wait until she's old enough to think for herself, and you will let her choose her path. Full stop, period, not negotiable." And so yeah.
What happened when you got to 12 step and they were like, choose a higher power?
I was like, this is so fucked, and I'm out of here because y'all are crazy and
religious.
Yeah. And this is all patriarchal nonsense. And, you know, and I was smart enough to read the big book and just say, okay, this is pretty two-faced here. Because on the one hand, they've got God as you understand him. And then on the other hand, you know, he is the father, you are his children, all great ideas are simple. You know, like the book is pretty, you know, other than
it's a little problematic.
Yeah. And the guy so anyway, so what I did was it irked me. It felt like the word God gave me hives. I know I use it now freely, right? But it felt like really agitating to me. And what I did was I talked about it before the meeting, during the meeting, after the meeting. I squawked about it. Like I was not okay with it until I was. And so what happened was Rachel took me through the steps. And, you know, in step 2, she really, you know, she said, grab a piece of paper, and on this side of the page, write what your higher power is. And on this side of the page, write what your higher power is not. You get to define it. This really is your choice. And what I came to, Arlena, is that I was not helping myself with my antagonism towards spiritual principles. And I think it says this somewhere in the 12 and 12. It's like, resign from the debating society already, right? Nobody's making you believe anything. And then my ego got involved and my intellect got involved, and I solved my God problem thusly. What I decided was that what I wanted was peace around the God issue, because I guess I'd been bringing it up at every meeting, and I was driving myself and everybody else crazy with it, with the, I don't believe in this. This is all hypocritical, blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to resign from the debating society. And so what I decided was that I was going to, in step 2, create my higher power as the mathematical superset of all other higher powers. So whatever you believed, I believed that and everything else too, and more. So first of all, my God is bigger than your God. And second of all,
my dad can beat up your dad.
And second of all, I can't take issue with anything that you say about your God because it's woven into the belief of my God. So the way I described it was a
Oh
Tootsie
my
Roll God,
gosh.
like just take all the higher powers and just roll them all up. That's my higher power. And somehow, I mean, this may be the one and only time in my entire life of recovery, Arlena, where I have intellectually solved any problem. I
That's
actually
amazing.
did get peace from that nonsense.
Well,
I
listen, you
really
had
did.
the intention. You're like, I intend to have peace.
Yeah.
And you found a way to get it. Makes
Yeah.
total sense to me. I mean, I remember, so I grew up in the church and I had a lot of stuff to overcome. And I was like, my mom she wasn't really buying into it for a long time. And my dad was uber religious. We used to say he was so heavenly minded, he was of no earthly good. That's so mean. I love my daddy. He was amazing. But yeah, the religion thing was problematic because I remember sitting in the back of a car one time and we were talking about religion and I was in tears because my mother did not believe in Jesus Christ, Lord Savior, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but I had been told that my human mind couldn't possibly fathom the vastness of God's love. And I couldn't reconcile the idea that she was going to burn in hell if she didn't believe a certain way.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was like, this makes
Yeah.
no sense. I was tortured about it and I had abandoned it. But I was like you, when I came to the program, I was like, I need something that makes sense. And I
Yeah.
love how you were able to find a way that made sense to you.
Yeah.
It's not debatable.
Yeah, totally. I remember being
Awesome.
agitated about that when I was 5 years old, about the whole people going to, even just that people believe
Yeah.
that. I was like, well, wait a second. Does someone who
Wait a
believes
minute.
that? What about the 1 billion people in China who've never heard of Jesus Christ? Do they think that they're all going to hell too? Like, I was like, wait, hold on a second.
Hold on. Hold
Hold
on.
on.
Hold up. There's got to be a loophole here somewhere.
Totally.
That's what
Totally.
I loved about the program is that even though they started out with what they had, right, with these ideas of what they had, the patriarchal blah blah blah, they left an open door for as you understood him. And I always said it, and I think that's whatever. Like
Yeah.
I had to do the translating. Like I grew up translating the Bible to like, here are these lessons. How do you apply it to your life? And I
Yeah.
was really grateful for that because I would read the big book and be like, and I would translate it. How does it apply to my life today? And I just let go of all the other
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. But,
I didn't get step 1 for free either. Steps 2 and 3 were hard for me. And step 1, because toward the end, I didn't have an alcohol problem and I really did come into AA. So toward the end there, I was smoking crack. And so, I had a couple unfortunate experiences early on with people sort of making it clear that all my drug talk was not,
acceptable.
welcome.
Yeah. Such
Yeah.
bullshit.
And so I kind of was like, well, I don't know that I'm an alcoholic. I mean, when I was 15, I was drinking, bottles of tequila and bottles of red wine. And like, I did have an alcohol problem for sure, but it had been a while. And so anyway, step 1 was hard for me too. I mean, I did
Yeah.
start going to NA meetings and it wasn't hard there. I knew I was a drug addict. I knew I
Yeah.
was an addict. And what's interesting is then my food addiction developed and, the foods that are problematic are made out of sugar and grain pretty much
Right.
and sugar and flour. And that's kind of what alcohol is made out of. So when I started to think about
Crazy.
like, well, if I can't handle a Twix bar, what makes me think I could handle tequila, right? So I'm really lucky that I didn't
Yeah.
ever go back out to do more research with alcohol because I really thought at various times in my recovery that I would probably be able to drink moderately, that I was just young, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful that I never tried to do that research because, it might have been a long time whatever. I don't know what would have happened. We're the same age roughly. So do you remember the choose your own adventure books when you're a kid?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the certain choices branch you into certain branch trees of outcomes. And I'm
Yeah.
just so grateful that I have never relapsed and I don't have to, experience what those outcomes might have been.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Listen, we're both very lucky. And listen, we have so much more to discuss, which is why we booked a second call. So as you hear this, you will be on the edge of your seat because we're gonna get into it. The bright line eating, the science, of Living Happy, Thin and Free, New York Times
Yeah.
bestseller. Congratulations. Fucking
Thank
amazing.
you.
So proud
Thank
of you.
you.
Done so much good work. And so the next time we meet, we're gonna get into it. I cannot wait. I put a query out to my community and I was like, hey, have you heard of this book? What do you think? Ooh, girl, hot and cold. Strong
Okay.
opinions. Strong opinions.
That's interesting because I would think that in a community of people who know about addiction and recovery, a lot of the criticism that bright line type approaches get to food wouldn't be there because people would understand that sometimes you really do need abstinence for
You
an
would
addictive
think.
issue.
You would
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
we'll
interesting. Cool.
cliffhanger.
All
We're
right.
gonna
All
we're gonna
right.
talk all about it. But listen, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, such a joy to spend time with you today. I love your big, beautiful smile. And I just feel like we have so much in common. I cannot wait for our next conversation. And
Hmm.
I'm going to leave links to all your things. If people are like, I cannot wait to find out what this bright line eating stuff is and your videos, I'm going to leave links in the show notes to all your things. So they'll be able to, like, if they can't wait for next week, they can get
Sure.
right into it.
Yeah. Because actually, I think I know when you're gonna, like, when this comes out, there's gonna be some videos that people can start watching right away. That if
Awesome.
you're curious, if you've had difficulty with addiction and you're curious, like, what's up with this food piece and how does it interact
Yeah.
in my brain? These videos, I only release them like 3 times a year. And when I do, they
Okay.
go around the world. And yeah, you can just go to brightlineeating.com now and go check them out.
At
Um,
least get on the
yeah.
email list so that you don't
Mhm.
miss anything for
Mhm.
sure.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
so sweet to talk with you. I can't wait till next
so
time.
yeah, so good to speak with you. Thank you so much. And we'll talk again real soon.
Okay. Bye.